Maya Chen sat in the sterile glow of children's memorials waiting room at 2 a.m, the blue-white luminescence from the hollow wall making her eyes ache. Around her, parents dozed in ergonomic chairs that cost more than her monthly rent, their designer clothing rumpled from worry that money couldn't smooth away. Her scrubs, real fabric, not the temperature-regulating synthetics most medical professionals wore, felt rough against her skin after 16 hours of crisis calls. The worn soles of her shoes had left actual footprints on the antimicrobial flooring, a visible trail of poverty in a place designed to eliminate such evidence. Her personal device buzzed against her palm, projecting Margaret Chen's message in elegant calligraphy that hung in the air between her hands. Victoria's engagement celebration tomorrow at Marchand's Skyline. 7 o'clock. Do try to look presentable. We're live streaming for her followers. Maya dismissed the hollow with a flick, but the words lingered like the afterimage of something burned. On her lap sat a stack of medical invoices, actual paper, because the hospital still sent physical copies to patients who couldn't afford neural payment integration. $340,000. The number had stopped meaning anything weeks ago. It was just another impossible thing in a year of impossible things, Miss Chen. A nurse appeared, her uniform shimmering with embedded health monitors. Lily's asking for you. Maya forced her spine straight, arranged her face into something resembling hope, and followed the nurse through doors that read her biometrics and found her barely worth admitting. In room 847, her daughter sat propped against pillows, a tablet projecting drawings into the air around her bed, a cottage, a garden, a dog that looked like it had too many legs because Lily was 8 and hadn't quite mastered perspective yet. Mom. Lily's voice was thin, reedy, the voice of someone whose immune system was eating itself from the inside. When I get better, can we get a puppy? Even a really small one? Maya sat on the edge of the bed, careful not to jostle the 4-line that kept her daughter tethered to machines that measured every breath, every heartbeat, every cell count that determined whether they had weeks or months. We'll see, baby. Is Grandma coming to visit? Lily's eyes were too large in her face, dark and knowing in the way that sick children's eyes became when they learned that adults lied about important things. Maya's jaw tightened involuntarily. She forced it to relax. Grandma's busy with Aunt Victoria's wedding, sweetie. The one that costs more than my treatment? Lily asked it casually, without accusation, because she'd overheard that particular conversation 3 weeks ago when Margaret had come by to drop off a fruit basket, actual fresh fruit, a luxury item that cost $200 and lasted 3 days. Don't worry about that. Maya smoothed the thin hair back from Lily's forehead, feeling the heat of low-grade fever that never quite broke. You just focus on getting stronger. After Lily drifted into medicated sleep, Maya walked to her car through the hospital's underground garage, where the lighting was dim enough that the poverty markers became less obvious. Her 2015 Honda Civic, a genuine antique now, running on actual gasoline that she bought from specialty stations, sat between a Tesla Quantum and someone's custom Aero sedan. The Civic's door handle required physical contact. She pulled it open and sat in the driver's seat. Surrounded by cracked vinyl and the smell of time passing, the drive to her apartment took her through 3 economic zones, each transition marked by the quality of the holodes that projected across building faces. In the Platinum District, the advertisements were immersive, responsive, calling out to pedestrians by name with offers tailored to their spending habits. By the time she reached her building in the substrate, the polite term for neighborhoods where people still lived in ground-level apartments, the ads were generic, flickering, occasionally glitching to show the cheap code underneath. She should sleep. The engagement party was in 16 hours, and she needed to find something to wear that wouldn't make her look like she'd given up entirely. Instead, she pulled up the photo archive on her device, scrolling back through the algorithm's memory. 10 years ago, Maya at her Harvard graduation, the last time her parents had looked at her with something other than disappointment. She'd announced her decision to pursue social work instead of corporate law. Robert Chen's face had hardened into the expression she now knew intimately, the look of an investment gone bad. We didn't pay $200,000 for you to make $50,000 a year, he'd said, loud enough that other families had turned to look. 7 years ago, her wedding to Tom. Margaret had spent the entire ceremony on her device, managing Victoria's social feeds. When Maya had asked her to put it away for just the vows, Margaret had looked at her with genuine confusion. Victoria has 3 million followers, Maya. Your wedding has 30 people. The backyard venue, chosen because it was all they could afford, had been quaint in Margaret's review, posted publicly, with location tags that made it very clear this was not the Chin standard. 5 years ago, the divorce. The family had gathered for Thanksgiving, and Aunt Susan had stage whispered across the table, "Well, what did you expect marrying someone with no ambition?" Tom hadn't lacked ambition. He'd been a teacher, one of the few who still worked with actual students instead of AI assistants. He'd left her because he wanted children, and she'd warned him about the genetic markers, the autoimmune conditions that ran in her bloodline like a curse. He'd accused her of being paranoid. 2 years later, Lily had proven her right, and Tom had signed away his parental rights from 3 time zones away. 3 years ago, Lily's diagnosis. Maya had broken her pride, called her parents, explained the situation. Robert had transferred $10,000, enough for the first round of testing, and then explained that they couldn't keep subsidizing her choices. The same month, Victoria's social score had dipped because she'd been photographed in a 6-month-old jacket. Margaret and Robert had bought her an $80,000 wardrobe refresh. Maya had stopped asking for help after that. She'd stopped going to family events, stopped answering calls unless they were emergencies. Victoria had sent her a message 6 weeks ago: "Missing my engagement party would be unforgivable. I'm telling everyone you're coming. Don't embarrass me." She parked in her building's garage. Actual underground parking was a luxury in the substrate, even if it meant sharing space with delivery drones, and took the stairs because the elevator was being repaired and had been for 3 months. Her apartment was on the 4th floor, small enough that she could see the kitchen from the bedroom door. She'd sold most of her furniture over the past year. What remained was minimal, functional, a life stripped to its essential components. The dress she'd worn to Victoria's birthday party 5 years ago still hung in the closet, protected by a garment bag she'd splurged on when she still believed in saving nice things. She pulled it out, held it up to her body in the mirror. It was a simple sheath, dark blue, purchased from a discount store that sold overstock from mid-tier brands. It would make her look like exactly what she was, someone who couldn't afford to keep up. She hung it on the bathroom door and stared at it while brushing her teeth, trying to muster the energy to care. Sleep, when it came, was shallow and full of numbers that wouldn't add up no matter how she arranged them. The next morning arrived with the artificial sunrise simulation from her building's central lighting system, a feature that had malfunctioned years ago and now produced a sickly yellow-green glow instead of the warm golden tones it advertised. Maya showered, blow-dried her hair with a dryer that predated smart appliances, and put on the dress. In the mirror, she looked tired and small and defeated. Perfect. Marchand's skyline occupied the top 3 floors of the Apex Tower, a building so tall it required its own weather regulation. Maya gave her name to the host, a human, because Victoria's event was expensive enough to merit actual staff, and was directed to the private dining room. The elevator ride took 90 seconds and traversed a vertical distance equivalent to her entire neighborhood's height. She watched the city drop away beneath her feet through the transparent floor, the substrate becoming indistinguishable from the industrial zones, both of them gray and small and forgettable. The elevator opened directly into the party. The room was a study in expensive restraint, floor-to-ceiling windows showing the city spread out like a circuit board, tables that appeared to float without visible support, lighting that adjusted to complement each guest's skin tone and outfit. The air smelled like something cultivated, engineered, a scent that cost more per milliliter than Maya's perfume cost per bottle. Victoria held court at the center of the room, draped in a dress that shifted colors with her movement, each shade precisely calculated to photograph well from every angle. Her engagement ring projected a subtle halo of light, a feature that cost extra and served no purpose except to ensure everyone noticed it. Brandon Hartwick stood beside her, his hand resting on the small of her back with the easy possession of someone who'd never had to ask permission for anything. The family clustered around them like satellites around a star. Margaret wore a dress that probably required a monthly maintenance subscription to keep the embedded tech functional. Robert's suit adjusted its fit as he moved, the fabric responding to his body language. Aunt Susan had done something to her face again. The skin around her eyes was too tight, too bright, the telltale mark of someone who could afford cosmetic nanotech but not the subtle kind. Maya took a step into the room and felt the temperature drop. Not literally, the climate control was too sophisticated for that, but the social temperature. The warmth of welcome that Victoria's followers were currently experiencing via the live stream drones hovering discreetly near the ceiling. Oh. Aunt Susan's voice carried across the room with the acoustic precision of someone who knew exactly how to be heard. Maya actually came. I thought you'd be too busy with your charity cases. Victoria turned, and her face performed the complex expression sequence that Maya had watched her practice as a teenager: surprise, delight, concern, all in under 2 seconds, each emotion perfectly calibrated for maximum sympathetic response. Sister. She crossed the room with her arms extended, pulled Maya into an embrace that involved no actual contact. The air kiss technique of someone for whom physical affection was a performance art. You made it. Oh honey, you didn't have to get me a gift. I know things are tight. Your presence is enough. The emphasis on enough was deliberate, a verbal italics that ensured everyone understood exactly what kind of presence Maya represented. Margaret appeared at Victoria's shoulder, her eyes scanning Maya's outfit with the clinical precision of a quality control system. Maya, darling. This is Marchand's skyline. Couldn't you have tried? Maya felt her nails dig into her palms. She forced her hands to relax, forced her voice to remain level. I came straight from the hospital, still playing nurse to other people's kids. Uncle Richard had materialized beside them. Drink in hand, his smile sharp enough to cut. When are you going to focus on your own career? I have a master's degree in social work from Harvard, Maya said, the words automatic after years of repetition. I run a crisis intervention program. It is a career. Richard's laugh was genuine amusement, the kind reserved for children who insisted the sky was green. If you say so. The hostess directed her to her seat, and Maya followed the gesture to find herself at the far end of the table, the architectural equivalent of exile. Next to her seat stood a man, and Maya's brain processed 3 pieces of information in rapid succession: devastatingly handsome, expensive suit, looking at her with curiosity instead of pity. He extended his hand as she approached. You must be Maya. I'm James. Friend of Brandon's. His handshake was warm, firm, the grip of someone who'd learned to read a lot from physical contact. Maya shook it, released it, tried not to think about how long it had been since anyone had touched her without it being a performance. Maya Chen. Sister of the bride-to-be, ah. His mouth curved slightly, the beginning of a smile that suggested he was enjoying a private joke. The infamous Maya. Maya felt her defenses activate, sharp and familiar. Infamous. Brandon mentioned Victoria has a sister who refuses to grow up and get a real job. James settled into his chair, his movements economical and precise. His words, not mine. Though somehow, I'm guessing there's more to the story. Maya sat, arranging her napkin with more care than necessary, buying time to decide how to respond. She was tired of defending herself. Tired of explaining. Tired of everything. Let me guess. You're here to tell me I wasted my potential too? Actually, James said, turning to face her fully, I was going to ask what you do. The real version, not Brandon's simplified one. something in his tone made her look up, made her actually see him instead of just registering another expensive suit in a room full of them. His eyes were brown, warm in a way that seemed genuine instead of engineered. When she explained her work, the crisis calls, the foster system navigation, the family reunifications that took months of patience and paperwork, he listened in a way that people with money rarely did. He asked questions that suggested he actually understood the complexity instead of just hearing social work and filing her under nonprofit. Avoid. How many kids would you say you've directly helped? He asked, and the question wasn't performative, wasn't setting up a follow-up about efficiency metrics or scalability. In 10 years. Maybe 3,000. But I don't do it for the numbers. No, James said, his eyes steady on hers. You do it because someone has to. And because you actually give a damn. The moment stretched between them, charged with something Maya couldn't quite name. For the first time in months, maybe years, she felt seen. Actually seen, not assessed or categorized or dismissed, but recognized as someone whose work mattered. The appetizers arrived, each plate a sculpture of ingredients that cost more than Maya spent on groceries in a week. Victoria tapped her champagne glass with a knife that probably cost more than Maya's security deposit, and the room fell obediently silent, everyone. Victoria's voice had that particular brightness that meant the live stream was capturing every word. Thank you so much for coming to celebrate Brandon and me. As you know, we're planning the wedding of the century. She giggled. The sound rehearsed to convey excitement without seeming excessive. Daddy and Mommy have been so generous. They've given us $230,000 for the wedding. Can you believe it? Maya couldn't, actually. The number hung in the air like smoke, obscene and impossible. $230,000. Nearly Lily's entire treatment cost. For one day. For flowers and doves and a string quartet from Vienna, for ice sculptures and custom everything, for a party that would be forgotten in a month except for the photos that Victoria would monetize across her platforms. Her device buzzed in her clutch. She pulled it out, saw the hospital's message, payment due Friday. $4,000. Late fees applied after 11:59 p.m. She didn't have it. She didn't have half of it. She donated plasma that morning, her arms still ached from the needles, and that would cover maybe $1,000 if she skipped groceries and walked to work instead of taking transit. And Maya, dear, Aunt Susan's voice cut through the fog of numbers. How is little Lily? Still in the hospital, I heard. Such a shame about her condition. Everyone turned to look. The live stream drones reoriented, sensing emotional content worth capturing. Maya felt her throat close, felt the familiar pressure of tears she couldn't afford to shed. She's managing, Maya said, the words coming from some autopilot part of her brain that still knew how to function in social situations. We've discussed this, Maya. Margaret's voice had that particular tone, the one that meant she was uncomfortable but committed to her position. We simply cannot divide our resources when Victoria is at such a crucial life milestone. Weddings happen once. Surely you understand. Besides, Robert added, his voice carrying the weight of logic and capital behind it, we offered to connect you with opportunities. You chose this path. We can't subsidize your lifestyle choices indefinitely. Victoria leaned forward, her expression arranged into sympathy with the precision of a sculptor working in flesh. Have you looked into government assistance? I mean, isn't that what your whole field is about? There must be programs. The implication landed like a punch. You help poor people, so accept being poor yourself. You chose this life, so live with the consequences. Your daughter's life is worth less than my centerpieces. Maya's hands shook. She put them in her lap, pressed them against her thighs hard enough to hurt. She would not cry here. She would not give them that satisfaction. She would sit through this dinner, she would smile, she would leave, and she would figure out how to find $4,000 by Friday because that's what she did. She figured things out alone, you know, James said, his voice low and intimate enough that Maya had to lean toward him to hear. I've been to 1,000 dinners with people who measure their worth in dollar signs and Instagram followers. His eyes found hers, held them. But I've never sat next to someone who actually saves lives before. That's unexpectedly sexy. Maya's breath caught. Her brain stuttered, trying to process the shift from devastation to whatever this was. Did you just call me sexy while my family is roasting me alive? I did. That half smile again, closer now, warm and real and completely inappropriate for the moment, which made it perfect. Is it working? I can't decide if you're insane or if I'm having a stress-induced hallucination. Could be both. His hand moved on the table, a gesture that seemed casual except for the way his fingers brushed against hers, deliberate and warm. But for the record, everything they're saying tells me they have no idea who you actually are. And that's their loss. The touch lingered. Maya felt electricity run up her arm, felt her pulse spike in a way that had nothing to do with panic and everything to do with the fact that this stranger, this impossibly attractive, clearly wealthy stranger, was looking at her like she mattered. Like she was valuable. Like she was worth more than the sum of her bank account and her pragmatic shoes and her failure to live up to her potential. Who are you? She asked, the words barely a whisper. Someone who knows value when he sees it. Victoria's engagement party dissolved into chaos the moment the door closed behind Maya and James, but Maya didn't see it. She was in James's Tesla, the kind that drove itself, but he'd switched to manual control. His hands steady on the wheel as they cut through the illuminated grid of the city. The car's interior adjusted to their biosignatures, temperature, lighting, even the seat configuration responding to their comfort levels, but Maya barely noticed. She was too aware of James beside her, the clean scent of whatever expensive thing he wore, the way his jaw tightened slightly when he concentrated on the road. I still don't understand why you did this, she said finally, breaking the silence that had stretched between them since they'd left Marchand's. I told you. I recognize value. His eyes flicked to her, then back to the road. The city lights slid across his face in patterns, making him look alternately shadowed and illuminated. But $340,000, Maya. He glanced at her fully this time, holding her gaze long enough that the car's autopilot engaged with a soft chime, taking over. I made $12 million this month in interest alone. That's not me bragging, that's me giving you context. I have more money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes. But I've met 1,000 people who want to be close to that money. And exactly 0 who've sacrificed the way you have for someone else. Maya looked down at her hands, at the calluses on her palms from carrying case files, from the plasma donation needles, from the simple physical reality of being poor. Any mother would, no. His voice was firm, not harsh but absolute. Any mother wouldn't. You know that. You see it every day. She was quiet because he was right. She'd seen mothers abandon children for far less than what she'd given up. She'd seen families dissolve over inheritances, over inconveniences, over the simple fact that love was harder than leaving. Besides, that half smile appeared again, the one that did something uncomfortable and electric to her chest. I'm hoping to make this the best $340,000 I ever spent. How? He pulled into Children's Memorial's parking structure, the one where vehicles were sorted by emission level and hers always ended up in the lowest tier. His Tesla was directed to the premium level, which meant actual covered parking and charging stations. He turned to face her fully, his body angled toward hers in the confined space of the car. By convincing you I'm not insane. By proving that someone can see you, value you, and want you exactly as you are. He paused, and Maya watched something shift in his expression, something that looked like vulnerability. By making you smile like you did when you left that restaurant. That smile is worth a hell of a lot more than $340,000. The moment hung between them, heavy and charged. Maya realized she wanted to kiss him. This stranger who had just altered the trajectory of her life with a single financial transfer. This man who looked at her like she was valuable when her own family had spent the evening cataloging all the ways she wasn't, but the moment broke. They were here for Lily. The hospital at night was a different creature than during the day. The public areas dimmed to conserve energy, the holographic directories switching to emergency-only mode, the endless stream of visitors reduced to a trickle of people dealing with genuine crises. Maya's credentials got them through security, though the guard's eyebrows rose when he saw James behind her, his suit and bearing screaming wealth in a place where most visitors arrived in the same clothes they'd been wearing for 3 days. Lily's room was on the 8th floor. In the section where the walls still displayed cheerful murals instead of the customizable holoprojections available in the premium wings. Maya knocked softly before entering, giving her daughter warning, giving herself time to arrange her face into something that wouldn't frighten a sick child. Lily was awake, the hospital tablet projecting cartoons onto the ceiling above her bed. When she saw Maya, her face lit up with the uncomplicated joy of an 8-year-old who didn't yet know how to hide what she felt. Then her eyes shifted to the tall stranger behind her mother, and curiosity replaced the joy. "Mommy." "Who's that?" Maya sat on the edge of the bed, careful of the 4-line. The monitoring equipment, all the technology keeping her daughter tethered to life. "Baby, this is James. He's a friend. And he has very good news." James moved forward, and Maya watched him assess the room, the worn furniture, the ancient television, the lack of all the expensive medical comforts that existed 3 floors up in the premium care suites. Then he did something she hadn't expected. He knelt beside the bed, putting himself at Lily's eye level, the same gesture of respect he'd used with her in the parking lot. "Hi, Lily. Your mom told me you're very brave." Lily's nose wrinkled. "I'm not that brave. I cry during blood tests." James's expression remained completely serious. "I cry during blood tests too. Don't tell anyone." The giggle that escaped Lily was pure delight, and Maya felt something in her chest crack open, some protective wall she'd built around her heart to survive the past 3 years. She watched this billionaire in his $1,000 suit kneeling on the hospital floor, talking to her daughter like she was a real person instead of a sick child to be pitied, and she thought, "I could love this man." The thought terrified her. "Lily, honey." Maya's voice came out rougher than she intended. "The doctors can do your treatment. Starting tomorrow. All of it. The whole thing." Lily's eyes went wide, dark pools in her pale face. "Really? You found the money?" Maya glanced at James, who was still kneeling, still watching Lily with that same gentle attention. "James helped us. He made it possible." Lily turned to James with the kind of awe usually reserved for superheroes and animated characters. "Are you a superhero?" James smiled, the expression transforming his face into something younger, more open. "Nope. Just someone who thinks your mom is pretty amazing." "She is amazing." Lily's voice carried absolute conviction. "She's the best mom in the whole world. I believe you." Maya watched them look at each other, this strange moment of understanding between a dying child and a billionaire stranger, and she felt the careful control she'd maintained all evening start to slip. James's eyes found hers over Lily's head, and something passed between them, something that made Maya's breath catch. Lily, perceptive in the way that children were when illness had made them old before their time, looked between them. A slow smile spread across her face. "Mom, are you blushing?" No." Maya could feel the heat in her cheeks, which only made it worse. James's grin was pure mischief. "She is. I made your mom blush. That's 2 wins in 1 night. Do you like my mom?" Lily asked with the directness of someone who hadn't yet learned that some questions weren't supposed to be asked. James held Maya's gaze. "Very much." Maya's breath stopped somewhere between her lungs and her throat. "Okay, that's enough interrogation from the 8-year-old. But she was smiling, really smiling, the kind of smile she'd forgotten she could make. They stayed until Lily drifted off to sleep, the medication and excitement pulling her under. Maya kissed her daughter's forehead, whispered promises about tomorrow, about the treatment, about the future that suddenly seemed possible instead of impossible. James waited by the door, giving them privacy, his silhouette backlit by the harsh corridor lighting. In the elevator down, Maya felt the exhaustion catch up with her. The adrenaline of the dinner, the revelation, the hospital visit, all of it crashed over her at once. She swayed slightly, and James's hand was there at her elbow, steadying her. "When did you last eat?" he asked. Maya tried to remember. "Lunch. Maybe. I don't." "Where do you want to go?" She looked at him, confused. "Go, for dinner. Or breakfast. Whatever meal this counts as." His hand was still on her elbow, warm through the thin fabric of her dress. "I eat at 5-star restaurants for business. This is personal." "Where do you want to go?" Something about the question, about the simple fact that he was asking instead of telling, made Maya's eyes sting with tears she couldn't afford. "There's a 24-hour place near my apartment. Best pie in the city, perfect." The diner was exactly what it claimed to be, 24 hours, decent pie, and a clientele that didn't care about wealth displays or social status because everyone there was too tired or too poor or too whatever to care. The booths were actual vinyl, cracked and repaired with tape. The menus were laminated paper. The coffee came in ceramic mugs that had been washed thousands of times until the logos were ghosts of themselves. James looked around with the kind of interest that suggested he wasn't slumming, wasn't performing curiosity for her benefit, but was genuinely engaged. They slid into a booth near the back, and when the waitress came, a woman in her 60s who looked like she'd been serving coffee since before Maya was born, James ordered coffee and apple pie without looking at the menu. "You come here before?" the waitress asked, surprised. "No, but it feels like I should have." James smiled at her. The kind of smile that made people feel seen. "What's good?" "Everything's good if you're hungry enough." She turned to Maya. "Usual, honey," Maya nodded, and the waitress left, and James was looking at her with that expression again, the one that suggested he was seeing things about her that she didn't show. "You come here a lot," he said. It wasn't a question. "After shifts." "When I can't go home yet because if I do, I'll just stare at the walls and count money I don't have." She picked at the edge of the table, where the laminate was peeling. "It's cheaper than therapy, and the pie's better, and the pie's better." The coffee arrived, and then the pie, and they sat in a cracked vinyl booth and talked for 4 hours. Maya told him about her divorce, about Tom leaving when Lily got sick, about the moment she'd realized she was truly alone. She told him about the first child she'd saved from an abusive home, about how the mother had thanked her and then gone back to the boyfriend 6 months later. She told him about choosing social work over law, about Robert's face when she'd made that announcement, about how she'd thought she could change his mind by being successful in her own way. "You can't make someone value what they don't value," James said quietly. "Believe me, I've tried. Tell me about your mother." Maya didn't know where the question came from, only that it felt necessary. James's hands wrapped around his coffee mug. And for a moment, she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, cancer. "I was 16. She was everything. My father left when I was 8, so it was just us. She worked 3 jobs to keep us fed, and when she got sick, she kept working until she physically couldn't anymore. I'm sorry, she's why I started the company. She used to say, 'James, money isn't evil. It's neutral. What matters is what you do with it.' So I made money. A lot of it. And then I realized I had no idea what to do with it that would make her proud. The foundation. The foundation." He looked up, met her eyes. "But that felt empty too. Like I was throwing money at problems without understanding them. Until I found your program. Until I read about this woman who'd helped reunite 847 families, who had a 94% success rate, who'd been nominated for awards she never attended because she was too busy working. And I thought, that's someone who knows what matters." Maya felt her throat tighten. "James, I'm not some saint. I'm exhausted, I'm broke, I'm barely holding it together. You're barely holding it together and you still show up. That's not sainthood, Maya. That's strength." He reached across the table, took her hand. His palm was warm, dry, the hand of someone who'd worked but not the way she'd worked. I'm not looking for perfect. I'm looking for real. This is really fast. Her voice shook despite her best efforts to control it. I know, we just met, I know. I have a sick kid, massive debt, a terrible family, and trust issues. His smile was gentle, understanding. I have commitment issues, workaholic tendencies, and I'm told I'm too intense. We're quite a pair, Maya laughed, the sound surprising her. This is insane, you keep saying that. But you're still here, I'm still here. James leaned forward, his eyes intense. Maya, I'm not going to pressure you. We can take this as slow as you want. But I need you to know, I'm interested. Very interested. In you, in Lily, in building something real. And I don't scare easy. The air between them felt charged. Electric. Maya realized she was leaning forward too, that inches separated them instead of feet. I don't know how to date a billionaire, good. Because I don't want to date like a billionaire. I want to date like a regular person who really likes you. Coffee dates. Walks in the park. Meeting your kid. No helicopters or yachts unless you specifically request them. What if I request them? Then we'll negotiate. The kiss happened in the space between banter and seriousness, in the moment when they both stopped pretending this was anything other than what it was. His mouth was soft, tentative at first, asking permission even as he took it. Maya kissed him back, months of loneliness and fear and exhaustion pouring into the contact. And when they broke apart, they were both breathing hard. This is really happening, Maya whispered. Only if you want it to. I want it to. Across the city, in the Chin family's pristine house in the Platinum District, Margaret Chin sat in her living room and cried. The space around her cost $3 million, equipped with smart furniture that adjusted to her posture, climate control that responded to her body temperature, lighting that optimized for her circadian rhythms. None of it made her feel better. Robert paced, his shoes, $1,000 Italian leather that adjusted to his gait, clicking against the marble floors. Victoria had finally left after an hour of hysterics. Her social media feeds open on multiple devices, watching in real time as her engagement announcement got buried under comments about her family's cruelty. This doesn't make sense, Victoria had screamed. Maya is nobody, Robert had told her to go home. Aunt Susan had tried to defend their decision, to explain that they'd been right to prioritize Victoria's milestone, and Robert had told her to leave too. Now it was just him and Margaret in their beautiful, cold house, facing the reality of what they'd done. We failed her, Margaret said, her voice small. Yes, our granddaughter was dying, and we bought Victoria a car, yes. What kind of parents are we? Robert had no answer. He'd built his wealth on understanding value, on assessing assets and making strategic decisions. He'd looked at his daughters and made calculations. Victoria was marketable, photogenic, willing to perform the role of successful heiress. Maya was stubborn, impractical, determined to throw away every advantage they'd given her. He'd invested accordingly. He'd been wrong. His device chimed, an alert from the social monitoring service they paid to track family mentions. He opened it, watched the thread spiral out of control. Someone at Marchand's had leaked the story, no names, but enough details that anyone who knew them would recognize the players. The thread had 2 million likes and climbing. The photo of James and Maya leaving, her tears, his protective stance, the way he looked at her like she was the only person in the world, 10 million views. Victoria's engagement post, carefully staged and photographed, meticulously hashtagged, 3,000 likes and comments that made Robert's stomach turn. Is this the sister whose kid was dying? Imagine choosing doves over your niece's life. That Morrison guy dodged a bullet with this family. His device chimed again. Brand partnerships pulling out of Victoria's contracts. Sponsors reconsidering their arrangements. The social credit system that governed everything in their world was turning against them, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. Maya woke to her device vibrating continuously, a sensation that penetrated her sleep until she reached for it automatically. 847 missed notifications. Her social media accounts, dormant for years, were suddenly active with tags and mentions and shares. Her work email was full of interview requests. Her personal line showed 17 voicemails from numbers she didn't recognize. She was viral, James called as she was scrolling through the chaos, trying to understand how her private devastation had become public entertainment. His voice was steady, grounding. "Hey. You okay? I'm viral, yeah. I saw. I'm sorry, I didn't anticipate that." Maya pulled up the thread, read through the details that were hers but somehow not hers, her life reduced to a narrative of suffering and salvation. "James, this is too much attention. I have a daughter, I have a career, I know. We can put out a statement if you want. Or we can ignore it. Whatever makes you comfortable. What do you want?" There was a pause, and Maya could hear city sounds in the background. James was already out, already doing whatever billionaires did at 7 in the morning. "Honestly, I want to take you and Lily to the aquarium this weekend. I want to keep getting coffee at that diner. I want to see where this goes. But only if that's what you want." Something in Maya's chest loosened. "The aquarium," Lily mentioned she likes sea turtles. "I may have already bought tickets." "You bought aquarium tickets? I'm wooing you." "Is it working?" Maya smiled despite everything. "It's working, good. Because I'm just getting started." Her device buzzed again. Her mother. "Maya, please. We need to talk. We're so sorry. Please call us." James was still there, his presence on the line a steady thing. "Your family?" he asked, reading something in her silence. "Yeah. What do you want to do?" Maya stared at the message, at the words that should have come 3 years ago, that should have come before she'd sold everything she owned. Before she'd donated plasma until her arms were tracked with needle marks, before she'd given up pretending she had anyone to rely on besides herself. "I don't know," she admitted. "Part of me wants to ignore them forever. Part of me wants to scream at them. Part of me just wants them to understand. They're starting to understand. The question is, can they change? Should I give them the chance? That's not my call." His voice was gentle. "But whatever you decide, I'm with you." 3 days later, Maya stood in Children's Memorial's treatment wing, the good one, the one where premium insurance and private funding got you access, watching her daughter get hooked up to machines that cost more than Maya made in 5 years. The treatment protocol was aggressive, experimental, the kind of thing that required daily monitoring and constant adjustment. Maya should have been terrified. Instead, she felt hope for the first time in months. James was there. He'd taken the week off. "I have people," he'd said when she'd protested, and now he sat in the corner of the treatment room, working on his tablet but present, solidly present in a way that made Maya's throat tight. Lily, nervous but trying to be brave, held Maya's hand with one hand and James's with the other. The nurse finished the setup, checked the monitors, gave them all encouraging smiles that felt genuine instead of performative. "Are you my mom's boyfriend now?" Lily asked James with the casual directness of someone who decided that almost dying meant she could ask anything. James glanced at Maya, a question in his eyes. Maya nodded, barely, but enough. "I'm trying to be," he said. "Good. She smiles more when you're around, Lil," Maya started, but James squeezed her hand gently. "She was always sad before," Lily continued, her eyes already getting heavy from the pre-medication. "Now she's happy sad." "Happy sad?" James asked, "Like you're still worried but you're not alone anymore." Maya and James looked at each other over Lily's head, and Maya saw in his face that he understood, the way Lily had just articulated something Maya hadn't been able to name. She wasn't alone anymore. The fear was still there, the worry, the weight of everything that could go wrong. But she didn't have to carry it by herself. "Well, your mom's not alone anymore," James said to Lily. "Neither are you. Deal?" Lily extended her pinky, the universal gesture of serious childhood promises. James hooked his pinky with hers, then with Maya's. The three of them connected in a moment that felt like something shifting, something new beginning. That night, after Lily had fallen asleep and the monitors had settled into steady rhythms, James drove Maya home. They sat in his car outside her building, the substrate quiet around them in the way it never was during daylight hours. The holodes had cycled down to minimal power, the streets empty of everyone except the night shift workers and the people who had nowhere better to be. "You don't have to keep doing this," Maya said, breaking the silence that had been comfortable but now felt charged with things unsaid. "Doing what? Rearranging your life for us. You have a company to run, a foundation. I have people for that. Right now, I want to be here." "Why?" James turned to face her fully, and in the dim light of the car, his expression was open in a way that made Maya's heart race. "You really don't know, James." He cupped her face with both hands, the gesture gentle but deliberate. "Because I haven't felt this alive in years. Because you make me want to be better. Because when I'm with you, money doesn't matter, status doesn't matter, the only thing that matters is making you smile. We've known each other 4 days, I know. It's crazy. It's too fast. Maya kissed him, cutting off whatever he was going to say, because she'd spent 3 years being careful and rational and it had gotten her exactly nowhere. James, his hands on her face, his mouth on hers, this felt like the first reckless thing she'd done that might actually be right. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Maya made a decision. "Come upstairs, Maya, I'm not asking you to stay the night. I'm asking you to come upstairs, sit on my terrible second-hand couch, and let me fall asleep in your arms while we watch a movie. Because I'm tired of being strong alone." James's expression softened into something that looked like relief. Okay. Her apartment looked smaller with him in it, his presence somehow making the space feel both cramped and intimate. They sat on her couch, the one she'd bought used because new furniture was a luxury she couldn't afford, and Maya curled into his side while some movie played on her ancient television. She didn't watch it. She just breathed, felt James's chest rise and fall beneath her cheek, let herself exist in this moment without planning for the next one. "James," she said, drowsy, "Yeah, thank you for seeing me, thank you for letting me." She fell asleep like that, and James stayed awake holding her, thinking about foundations and partnerships and the future he was starting to see taking shape. A future where value meant something different than what he'd been taught. A future where the most important investment he'd ever make was the one he was making right now, in this woman who'd sacrificed everything for someone she loved. A week later, James held a press conference to announce the Morrison Foundation's partnership with Maya's program. The venue was packed, major media outlets, tech reporters, social impact journalists, all drawn by the combination of James's wealth and the viral story that had made Maya's work suddenly visible. But instead of taking center stage, James introduced Maya. She stood at the podium in a simple dress. James had bought her a designer one. Something that cost more than her rent, and she'd refused it with the kind of stubborn dignity he was learning to recognize and love, and spoke about the work with the kind of passion that money couldn't buy. 50 cities, she said, her voice steady despite the cameras. $50 million over 5 years. We're going to scale a model that works, that saves families, that gives children the chance to grow up with the people who love them. This isn't about me. It's about the 3,000 kids I've helped, and the 30,000 more we're going to help. It's about believing that every child deserves someone to fight for them." The applause was genuine, the kind that came from people who understood they were witnessing something important. Afterward, a reporter raised her hand. "Mr. Morrison, are you and Ms. Chen romantically involved?" James glanced at Maya. She nodded, barely, but enough. "Yes. How did you meet?" "I met her at her sister's engagement party. She was the most underdressed, most exhausted, most underestimated person in the room. And the most remarkable. I knew immediately I wanted to know her." Maya took the microphone, her cheeks flushed. "He's biased, completely," James agreed, grinning. "Objectively biased." The photo from that moment, James looking at Maya like she'd hung the stars, Maya laughing despite her embarrassment, went viral too. But this time, the narrative was different. This time, they controlled the story. The aquarium was bioluminescent at night, engineered organisms casting shifting patterns of blue and green across the transparent corridors that wound through massive tanks. Maya watched Lily press her face against the glass, tracking a sea turtle that moved with the slow grace of something that had nowhere urgent to be. 3 weeks into treatment and Lily's color was better, her movements less fragile, though the medical team cautioned against hope too soon. Maya was done being cautious about hope. Hope was all she had left that hadn't been stripped away by circumstance. James stood beside her, close enough that their shoulders brushed, maintaining the careful distance they'd negotiated over the past month. He'd been patient in a way that surprised her, no pressure, no expectations, just steady presence and terrible jokes that made Lily laugh and Maya's chest ache with something she was still afraid to name. His hand found hers now, fingers threading through hers with the casual intimacy of people who'd stopped pretending this was temporary. "She's doing better," he said quietly, watching Lily point excitedly at a school of fish that flashed silver in the manufactured current. "The doctors are cautiously optimistic." Which is their way of saying they don't want to promise anything in case she crashes. Maya's voice was flat, protective, the tone of someone who'd learned not to trust good news. "But you're optimistic, I'm terrified." "There's a difference," James squeezed her hand. "Both can be true." Maya's device buzzed in her pocket. She ignored it. It had been buzzing constantly for 3 weeks, interview requests, speaking invitations, messages from journalists who wanted to tell her story, messages from family members who suddenly remembered she existed. She'd answered none of them. The foundation partnership was public knowledge now, her programs suddenly newsworthy, her face recognizable to strangers who stopped her in grocery stores to tell her she was inspiring. She hated it. She'd taken the job to help kids, not to become a symbol of whatever narrative people wanted to project onto her life. The device buzzed again. Then again. James glanced at her. "You should check that." "I really shouldn't, Maya." She pulled out the device, swiped through the notifications until she found the one that mattered. "Margaret Chin, family dinner. This Sunday. Please come. We need to talk." "All of us." Maya's jaw clenched involuntarily. James leaned over her shoulder, read the message, said nothing. That was another thing she appreciated about him. He didn't fill silence with platitudes or unwanted advice. He just waited. "They want to apologize," Maya said finally. "In person. As a family. Do you want to go?" "No." "Yes." "I don't know." She shoved the device back in her pocket. They had 3 years to apologize. They had 1,000 opportunities to show up. They chose Victoria's Instagram metrics over Lily's life. "Why should I give them the satisfaction of forgiveness now that it's socially convenient?" "You shouldn't. Unless you want to." Maya looked at him, at the steady brown eyes that somehow always saw more than she wanted to show. "What would you do?" "I'd probably go. But I'd make them work for it." He smiled slightly. "I'm petty like that, despite everything." Maya laughed. "You're really not helping." "I'm not trying to help. I'm trying to be honest." He turned to face her fully, his back to the glowing tanks, his expression serious. "They hurt you. They're going to keep hurting you unless something fundamental changes. The question isn't whether you forgive them, it's whether they're capable of earning forgiveness. And you won't know that unless you show up and find out." Maya wanted to argue, to explain why giving them another chance was just setting herself up for more disappointment. Instead, she found herself typing a response. "Sunday. 6 o'clock. I'm bringing James and Lily." Non-negotiable. Margaret's response came within seconds. "Of course. We can't wait to see you all." "Well," Maya said, showing James the exchange. "I guess we're doing this," he confirmed. "And for what it's worth, I'm excellent at uncomfortable family dinners. I once told a venture capitalist that his business model was functionally identical to a pyramid scheme. At Thanksgiving. While his mother was in the room. "Did he ever speak to you again?" "No. But I was right, and his company collapsed 6 months later." Sometimes being right is more satisfying than being liked. Maya kissed him because she could, because Lily was distracted by the sea turtles, because James understood that forgiveness wasn't weakness and boundaries weren't cruelty, and sometimes you had to show up to uncomfortable situations just to prove you couldn't be made invisible anymore. The Chen family home sat in the Platinum District, a structure of smart glass and imported materials that adjusted its opacity based on time of day and external weather conditions. Maya pulled up in her Honda Civic. She'd refused James's offer to drive them in something less obviously poor, and sat for a moment in the driveway, gathering courage. The house loomed above her, pristine and unwelcoming, the kind of place that required you to remove your shoes at the door not for cleanliness but for status maintenance. "It's really big," Lily observed from the back seat, her eyes wide. She'd only been to her grandparents' house a handful of times, usually for mandatory holiday appearances that Maya had endured with gritted teeth and premature departures. "Big doesn't mean better," Maya said automatically, the same thing she'd been telling herself for years. James, sitting in the passenger seat in deliberate solidarity with her vehicular poverty, reached over and squeezed her knee. "Ready?" "Absolutely not." "Good. Let's go." Margaret opened the door before they reached it, the house's biometric sensors alerting her to their arrival. She looked older than Maya remembered, or maybe it was just that the house's lighting was less forgiving than the restaurant had been. Her clothes were still expensive, mural fabric that shifted colors subtly with her mood, currently cycling through anxious blues and greens, but her face was drawn, her smile uncertain. "Maya. You came." Margaret's eyes moved to James, to Lily in her wheelchair. The treatment made her tired. And Maya had learned to accept help when it was offered. "All of you. Please, come in." The interior was exactly as Maya remembered, minimalist furniture that cost more than most people's cars, art installations that required maintenance contracts, air that smelled faintly of whatever expensive fragrance the environmental system was programmed to dispense. Robert emerged from the living room, Victoria behind him, and Maya felt the old familiar tension settle into her shoulders, but something was different. Victoria wasn't wearing designer clothes. She was in jeans, actual denim, not the engineered fabric that mimicked denim while maintaining structural integrity and stain resistance, and a simple sweater. Her hair was pulled back in a ponytail instead of the elaborate styles her hairstylist usually constructed. She looked, Maya realized with surprise, like a regular person. "Hi," Victoria said, the single syllable carrying more uncertainty than Maya had heard from her in a decade. "Thanks for coming." "I know you didn't have to." Maya said nothing. She wasn't ready to make this easy. They settled in the living room, an awkward arrangement where Maya and James sat on one couch, Lily between them, while Margaret, Robert, and Victoria occupied the opposite side. The physical distance felt symbolic, a gap that words would have to bridge if anything was going to change. Robert cleared his throat. "Maya. We owe you an apology." "You owe me a lot more than an apology," Maya said, her voice level. "But let's start there. We were wrong." Margaret's voice was soft, but steady. "We were wrong about your choices, about your career, about your priorities. We measured your success by our standards and found you lacking, and that was deeply, profoundly wrong. We were cruel," Victoria added, and her voice cracked slightly. "I was cruel. I treated you like you were less than me because you didn't care about the things I cared about. And then I watched you almost lose everything while I spent more on my engagement party than you needed to save your daughter's life, and She stopped. Swallowed hard. "I don't know how to live with that." Maya felt James's hand find hers, grounding her. She wanted to rage at them, to list every slight and dismissal and moment of calculated cruelty. She wanted to make them hurt the way they'd hurt her. But Lily was watching, and Maya had spent too many years teaching children that anger was valid but cruelty was a choice. "Why now?" she asked instead. "Why apologize now, when it's convenient? When the whole world is watching and judging you? Why should I believe this is genuine instead of damage control?" Robert flinched, but he didn't look away. "Because you're right. We should have done this 3 years ago. We should have done it the moment Lily got sick. We should have shown up at the hospital, paid the bills without being asked, been the family you deserved. We didn't, and there's no excuse for that. But watching you walk out of that restaurant with James, watching you rebuild your life without us, watching you succeed on your own terms." He paused, and Maya saw something that looked like genuine shame in his face. "It broke something in me. Made me realize I'd been measuring value by all the wrong metrics. My engagement got called off, Victoria said abruptly. Brandon broke up with me 2 weeks ago. Said he couldn't be with someone whose family values were so publicly terrible. His parents were worried about brand association. She laughed, the sound bitter. Turns out treating your sister like garbage is bad for social credit scores. Who knew? Maya felt a flicker of something that might have been sympathy, quickly suppressed. I'm sorry, don't be. He was right. I was. Victoria looked down at her hands. I was so focused on maintaining an image that I forgot to have actual values. I chose a wedding over my niece's life. That's not who I want to be, so you've decided to become a better person now that it's cost you something, Maya said, keeping her voice neutral. How noble, I deserve that. Victoria met her eyes. I deserve worse than that. But I'm hoping you'll give me the chance to prove this isn't just performance. I canceled the Tuscany wedding. I'm donating the money Mom and Dad gave me, all of it, to your foundation. $230,000 for pediatric crisis intervention programs, Maya's breath caught. She looked at Margaret and Robert, who nodded confirmation. We're setting up a family foundation in your name, Margaret added. To fund medical care for families in crisis. We're starting with $5 million, with plans to grow it. We want you to have control over the disbursements. Why? The question came out harsher than Maya intended. Why do this now? Why not 3 years ago? Why not when Lily was first diagnosed? Why not, because we were cowards? Robert's voice was flat, factual. We were comfortable. And you made us uncomfortable. You reminded us that money doesn't solve everything, that status doesn't equal worth, that sacrifice means something. And instead of facing that, we pushed you away. We told ourselves you'd made your choices and deserved the consequences. We were wrong, Maya. Completely, fundamentally wrong. Maya looked at Lily, who was watching the adults with the careful attention of someone who'd learned to read emotional undercurrents. What do you think, baby? Lily considered the question with the seriousness it deserved. I think Grandma and Grandpa and Aunt Victoria feel really bad. I think they want to be better. I think, she paused, choosing her words carefully. I think people can change if they really want to. Miss Sarah at the hospital says that all the time. People can change, out of the mouths of children, Maya thought. She felt James squeeze her hand, felt his silent support for whatever decision she made. This was hers to decide, forgiveness or distance, reconciliation or boundaries. No one could make this choice for her. I'm not ready to trust you, she said finally, the words emerging slow and deliberate. I'm not ready to pretend the last 3 years didn't happen. I'm not ready to play happy family and act like your donations erase the fact that you chose status over your granddaughter's life. But, she paused, watching their faces. Seeing hope and shame and genuine regret mixed together. But I'm willing to try. Slowly. With very clear boundaries. If you can respect that, we can, Margaret said quickly. Whatever you need. However long it takes, I need you to understand that I'm successful by my own measures, not yours. I need you to value my work, my choices, my life as I've built it, not as you think it should be. I need you to treat me and Lily with respect, not pity. And I need you to prove, through actions not words, that you've actually changed. We will, Robert said. Starting now. Starting today. The conversation that followed was awkward, stilted, the kind of careful negotiation that happened when people were trying to rebuild something broken. They talked about Lily's treatment, Margaret and Robert asking informed questions, actually listening to the answers. They talked about Maya's foundation partnership, Victoria expressing genuine interest in the work, asking how she could help beyond financial contributions. They talked about James's foundation, about the plans for national expansion, about the families they were hoping to serve, and slowly, carefully, Maya felt something shift. Not forgiveness. Forgiveness would take time, would require proof of sustained change, would need to be earned through consistent action over months or years. But something like possibility. Something like the first tentative step toward healing. Lily fell asleep in Maya's lap, exhausted by the emotional intensity and the medication that still regulated her days. James suggested they leave, but Margaret asked if they could stay for dinner. Maya almost refused, old habits of protection rising up. But then she saw Victoria's face, the genuine hope there, and she heard herself agreeing. Dinner was ordered from a restaurant, not Marchand's, not anywhere pretentious, just decent food from a place that didn't require advance reservations or dress codes. They ate at the kitchen table instead of the formal dining room, a small concession to informality that Maya appreciated. The conversation was easier now, less fraught, though Maya maintained her wariness. Trust wasn't rebuilt in an evening. "I've been thinking about going back to school," Victoria said at one point, pushing noodles around her plate. "Maybe social work. Or education. Something that actually matters instead of just performing matching for followers." "That's good," Maya said cautiously. "What made you decide that?" Victoria looked up, met her sister's eyes. "You did. Watching you sacrifice everything for something you believe in. Watching you build a life that has actual meaning. I want that. I want to be able to look at myself in the mirror and not feel empty." Maya softened slightly despite herself. "It's hard work. Emotionally exhausting. The pay is terrible. You'll see things that break your heart regularly, but it matters," Maya confirmed. After dinner, after Lily woke up and they played a board game that Margaret produced from somewhere, after Robert told stories about his own father that explained, if not excused, some of his attitudes about success and value, James and Maya loaded Lily back into the car. The goodbye was still awkward, still tentative, but it was a goodbye that included plans to meet again instead of vague. "Turns out treating your sister like garbage is bad for social credit scores." "Who knew?" Maya felt a flicker of something that might have been sympathy, quickly suppressed. "I'm sorry, don't be." He was right. "I was." Victoria looked down at her hands. "I was so focused on maintaining an image that I forgot to have actual values. I chose a wedding over my niece's life. That's not who I want to be, so you've decided to become a better person now that it's cost you something," Maya said, keeping her voice neutral. "How noble, I deserve that." Victoria met her eyes. "I deserve worse than that. But I'm hoping you'll give me the chance to prove this isn't just performance. I canceled the Tuscany wedding. I'm donating the money Mom and Dad gave me, all of it, to your foundation. $230,000 for pediatric crisis intervention programs." Maya's breath caught. She looked at Margaret and Robert, who nodded confirmation. "We're setting up a family foundation in your name," Margaret added. "To fund medical care for families in crisis. We're starting with $5 million, with plans to grow it. We want you to have control over the disbursements." "Why?" The question came out harsher than Maya intended. "Why do this now? Why not 3 years ago? Why not when Lily was first diagnosed? Why not, because we were cowards?" Robert's voice was flat, factual. "We were comfortable. And you made us uncomfortable. You reminded us that money doesn't solve everything, that status doesn't equal worth, that sacrifice means something. And instead of facing that, we pushed you away. We told ourselves you'd made your choices and deserved the consequences. We were wrong, Maya. Completely, fundamentally wrong." Maya looked at Lily, who was watching the adults with the careful attention of someone who'd learned to read emotional undercurrents. "What do you think, baby?" Lily considered the question with the seriousness it deserved. "I think Grandma and Grandpa and Aunt Victoria feel really bad. I think they want to be better. I think," she paused, choosing her words carefully. "I think people can change if they really want to. Miss Sarah at the hospital says that all the time. People can change," out of the mouths of children, Maya thought. She felt James squeeze her hand, felt his silent support for whatever decision she made. This was hers to decide, forgiveness or distance, reconciliation or boundaries. No one could make this choice for her. "I'm not ready to trust you," she said finally, the words emerging slow and deliberate. "I'm not ready to pretend the last 3 years didn't happen. I'm not ready to play happy family and act like your donations erase the fact that you chose status over your granddaughter's life." "But," she paused, watching their faces. Seeing hope and shame and genuine regret mixed together. But I'm willing to try. Slowly. With very clear boundaries. If you can respect that, we can, Margaret said quickly. Whatever you need. However long it takes, I need you to understand that I'm successful by my own measures, not yours. I need you to value my work, my choices, my life as I've built it, not as you think it should be. I need you to treat me and Lily with respect, not pity. And I need you to prove, through actions not words, that you've actually changed. We will, Robert said. Starting now. Starting today. The conversation that followed was awkward, stilted, the kind of careful negotiation that happened when people were trying to rebuild something broken. They talked about Lily's treatment, Margaret and Robert asking informed questions, actually listening to the answers. They talked about Maya's foundation partnership, Victoria expressing genuine interest in the work, asking how she could help beyond financial contributions. They talked about James's foundation, about the plans for national expansion, about the families they were hoping to serve, and slowly, carefully, Maya felt something shift. Not forgiveness. Forgiveness would take time, would require proof of sustained change, would need to be earned through consistent action over months or years. But something like possibility. Something like the first tentative step toward healing. Lily fell asleep in Maya's lap, exhausted by the emotional intensity and the medication that still regulated her days. James suggested they leave, but Margaret asked if they could stay for dinner. Maya almost refused, old habits of protection rising up. But then she saw Victoria's face, the genuine hope there, and she heard herself agreeing. Dinner was ordered from a restaurant, not Marchand's, not anywhere pretentious, just decent food from a place that didn't require advance reservations or dress codes. They ate at the kitchen table instead of the formal dining room, a small concession to informality that Maya appreciated. The conversation was easier now, less fraught, though Maya maintained her wariness. Trust wasn't rebuilt in an evening. I've been thinking about going back to school, Victoria said at one point, pushing noodles around her plate. Maybe social work. Or education. Something that actually matters instead of just performing matching for followers. That's good, Maya said cautiously. What made you decide that? Victoria looked up, met her sister's eyes. You did. Watching you sacrifice everything for something you believe in. Watching you build a life that has actual meaning. I want that. I want to be able to look at myself in the mirror and not feel empty. Maya softened slightly despite herself. It's hard work. Emotionally exhausting. The pay is terrible. You'll see things that break your heart regularly, but it matters, Maya confirmed. After dinner, after Lily woke up and they played a board game that Margaret produced from somewhere, after Robert told stories about his own father that explained, if not excused, some of his attitudes about success and value, James and Maya loaded Lily back into the car. The goodbye was still awkward, still tentative, but it was a goodbye that included plans to meet again instead of vague promises to stay in touch. In the car, driving back through the city's economic zones, Maya felt the exhaustion of the evening settle into her bones. James was quiet beside her, giving her space to process. Lily was asleep in the back, her breathing even and steady. You did good, James said finally. I don't know. Maybe I'm being naive. Maybe they'll go right back to how they were once the social pressure dies down, maybe. But maybe they won't. And if they do, you set boundaries. You walk away. You don't owe them infinite chances just because they're family. Maya nodded, knowing he was right. She'd spent so long defining herself in opposition to her family that she'd forgotten she could choose how to engage with them. She could demand respect without cutting them off entirely. She could maintain boundaries without burning bridges. She could be both strong and forgiving, both cautious and open to possibility. Thank you, she said. For coming with me. For not trying to tell me what to do. I'm learning that you don't need someone to tell you what to do. You just need someone who shows up and doesn't leave when things get complicated. Maya reached over, took his hand, held it tightly. I'm glad you showed up, me too. 6 months later, Maya stood at a podium in front of 200 people at the National Social Work Conference. The room was full of colleagues, academics, foundation representatives, people who devoted their lives to the unglamorous work of helping families in crisis. The Morrison Foundation Partnership had funded programs in 30 cities so far, with 20 more in development. Lily was in remission, back in school, learning to be a regular kid again instead of a sick kid. Victoria had enrolled in a master's program in social work, and while Maya maintained healthy skepticism, her sister was showing up to their monthly dinners and asking intelligent questions and generally behaving like someone who was trying. Margaret and Robert's Family Foundation had funded medical care for 147 families in the past 6 months. They'd named it the Lily Chen Foundation for Pediatric Medical Support, and they'd given Maya complete control over how funds were distributed. It wasn't redemption took longer than 6 months, but it was evidence of sustained effort. And James was in the audience, third row center, watching her with that expression that still made her breath catch. They'd moved slowly, carefully, building something real instead of rushing towards something flashy. He'd met her colleagues, her friends from the neighborhood, the families she'd helped who'd become part of her chosen family. She'd met his business partners, his foundation staff, the handful of people he trusted with the parts of himself he didn't show the world. They'd built something that felt solid, something that could weather complications and setbacks and the general chaos of trying to merge two very different lives.